That voice right there, the radio voice. Yeah, I mean,
it was good.
We'll put some music in at some point. We're going to start that. Jason, you and I were going back and forth a little bit. You're asking what kind of topic I want. I think cash flow is a good topic for the moment, especially in this fun, crazy times of clients going, yeah, we're going to extend your payment terms, or next year maybe probably do it less. Like what? Like it's. Have you been seeing that lately?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been seeing that chatter lately in certain parts of our community. But I think this is, I think with every sort of headwind, there's sort of an opportunity here, and it gives owners and operators a real chance to dig into and potentially update, things like capacity, really digging into all these things are related, right? Digging into their HR, figuring out what their growth trajectory looks like that's realistic and sustainable, right? Focusing on their BD for more efficient and consistent pipelines and all the rest of it. I do think that what you're starting to see is some clients are starting to get affected by the environment, and therefore they're becoming, and I have to say, I think this is just kind of the price of doing business in our line of work. I mean, somebody's always going to outstanding receivables are kind of part and parcel of the business, right? And I think it's just like, and honestly, I think that's an easy thing to say if you're in a place where, you're in a comfortable cash on hand position. But I've definitely been at companies and in places where like outstanding receivables means like payroll is in jeopardy, right? Like significant financial obligations could be in jeopardy, depending where you are on your journey, right? And so, yeah, I think so it's easy to sit there when you have some money in the bank and go, oh, well, it's just part of the business. And sometimes you just got to put up with it and, roll with the punches. I also think the other thing is you want to consider like how many hills do you want to die on? You know what I mean? Sometimes right. Sometimes you have leverage and sometimes you don't. And I think it's really important to recognize where you do in terms of cash flow and where you don't in terms of cash flow, because like misguided energy to where you're never going to get that Fortune 500 client to budge because they're just in charge and that's the way it is. So yeah, I mean, how about you? Are you seeing anything similar?
Yeah, we're going negotiations with big clients right now of like, is it status quo? Can we cut some stuff? Reminding them, they added 10 different projects that are running at the same time that they can't cut, which is interesting. So we're seeing that all over the place. For us, in reality, for us, it's funny. I love talking about cash flow because our first year of business sucked. We almost lost our shirt that first year. And because we were just doing hourly and going by, it's a, 45-day pay period or 60 days or 30 never hit ever, right? As a small company when we start. So we had a particular one, we almost lost everything. I couldn't make payroll, right 2 days before Christmas. So that was fun. But we kind of went from doing hourly into what retainer looks like for us now, but over the years kind of stepped through it, right? Because the first idea was like, all right, I don't want to work on an hourly where I then have to go chase it 30 days from now. What's the next logical step of like, here's what we're doing? And we started with like billing every 2 weeks ahead to, bucket of hours to play with everything to where we are now. And we solved the cash flow problem for us is that, the idea now is we send an invoice on the 15th. It's due on the 1st, and that's the month we work in. So September 15th, the invoices for October went out, and they're due on the 1st. Usually, we give them a little bit of a grace period. Now, we have a ginormous client. It requires 60 days, and that's 60, and it doesn't matter. The beauty of that is, though, we got everything in a contract that we wanted, except for that. The CEO would have to sign off on that. We're like, well, we can't argue that. Right. But what's cool about that is they pay on time every time. It is like a machine. So I know exactly where that's coming from without, and sometimes it's kind of crappy. It actually works out nicely at the end of the year because we don't get the December stuff. And then we get this onslaught a lot of times right before taxes are due. So it kind of balances out nicely. Unless they're in the mood of like, all right, we need to dump all this money beforehand. And we're like, they dump it right in December. And then you're like, okay, now I got to pay taxes on this. Now what I do? It's
Well,
like,
we're going through something like that
and
too,
we're
but
cash basis. So it's a
right.
little easier to deal with that kind of momentum where you can take money this year and sort of put it together next year when you're accrual.
Yeah, we were talking about
Accrual
accrual and
breaking
cash.
cash,
So
right?
yeah, what I was going to say is you're right. A lot of agencies are cash based, but a lot of our clients are not, right? And so
Right.
sometimes there are opportunities where, similarly, we're going through this with one of our clients right now, where they need their fiscal year is September 30, October 1, right? So they want to get a lot of the bookkeeping done ahead
Mm-hmm.
of time, but they're accrual based, so they don't mind actually paying out the cash to their
Right.
vendors until they've got up to 6 months to basically pay out. So for us, when we try and talk to them, is we'd rather get your bookkeeping done, no problem, but don't send us the cash until the next year. It helps keep our taxes down. Also, I don't love, and this is me, maybe in a retainer basis, it's fine. I don't mind getting paid ahead of work, but what I don't always love is like large projects being paid for in significant portions ahead of time, and then but you're going to do the work a quarter or two from now, right? Because now you're
yeah.
right.
I mean,
because that gets you out of balance real fast.
Right.
Yeah.
For us, the retainer model is your retainer services, so it's month to month.
Right. It's month to month, so it's why getting paid ahead of time, totally works. And then if there's overage, you can do that in arrears or whatever with the next invoice, right? But sometimes we have projects where clients are like, oh, we have to get this prepaid ahead of time, and I'm like, it's tricky, right? It's very tricky because suddenly you're kind of flush with more cash, but now down the road when you're actually doing that work, there's going to be no influx of cash ahead against the hours when you're actually doing them. There's this delay effect,
and then you got to
right?
have and your financial person has to be really, really sort of detailed, and not only detailed, but headstrong about, no, we can't use that cash. It has to sit there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's one of the hardest things to do, right? Because you're all of a sudden, as a small agency, you're like, crap, I have this payroll to do. You're kind of boring against it. Well, listen, and I've done it when we were in small and we were in trouble and we had to figure it out, But
right, because you started T&M, right? Yeah.
Right. When you grow, it's like that's not.
So when you do the retainer model, obviously, you don't have as many sort of contractual hurdles to jump over. You guys have pretty much a 15-day net pay term, and it's all kind of set out there. And there's really no point in talking about there's no reason an account should necessarily go delinquent, because you guys can always just say, hey, we're just not going to do the work, right?
Correct. Ours right now in a contract is doing it first. If it's not paid by the fifth, we stop.
Right.
Which I never have to do. Yeah, and that goes for, if you look at it, you're paying to retain us to give you time, basically, right?
Right.
It's not based on deliverables. Right. We don't base it on deliverables. We don't base it on hours. Internally, sure, we base it on how fast we work with our team. There's some hours in there because we have to kind of track how fast things get done. But they're not tied into money for hours type of thing. When we first started doing it, I threw a number at the wall and said, let's work backwards and figure this out.
Yeah.
Now it's tied into different things, and we have some of our own analytics that we work on. And that actually goes for working with a client too, because we work with internal teams for them. So you look at their team and how it works and how fast we can deliver a ticket, basically, within 1 or 2 days. Then you have this mean, and you figure that out, and we have a whole thing for this now. But when we started, it was just throwing the wall and let's just do this. It makes it easy, clean. I mean, if you think about it, nobody has to touch it. The project managers and stuff like that, that's what they do. That's their job, to deliver the work. Don't worry about the money.
Yeah.
On our side, on our side, they know better. So when they all see it going way out of there, or there's a new project in, then we're like, yeah, we have that conversation with the client. But other than that, it's pretty.
Yeah, we're
sort
of because we run kind of all kinds of different types of projects and contracts. So we have T&M, we've got fixed, and we've got retainers. And obviously, when you get into AR and receivables and cash flow, for each of those different kind of contracts, you kind of need to have a different amount of awareness about delinquency and sort of what your contingencies are in the event of delinquency, right?
Yep.
And
It's one of the reasons I didn't want to do it.
Yeah,
It's just too much. There's just that work is just silly.
It's there's a decent amount of overhead in kind of managing that, but I think one of the ways that I've seen it work really well is just, again, if you're an operator or an owner, coming up with those standards of like what is acceptable. Like, again, if you kind of go back to the premise of like 100% of the clients are not going to be 100% in good standing 100% of the time. That's right. That is not going to happen. So go into it with that premise. Then you go into it with like how much, depending on your cash on hand situation, like how much is an acceptable amount of delinquency to you? Like if it's 5 days based on a retainer, totally understandable. If you're running like a big project, hopefully you have better communication lines. If somebody's only 5 days overdue, again, there's a grace period, especially if you're billing out in longer chronological payment milestones, right? You're not going to get super worried about a couple of days being over or whatever, right? You guys are working in tighter, 30, 31 day periods or whatever as a retainer. So I think like figuring that out, depending on how you're working with your clients and thinking about what the contingencies are and what like your capacity for risk is as you sort of chase money. Because I agree with you, like some money is worth chasing and some money is just like, that's just the cost of doing business sometimes. And the real answer to that as an operator is making sure your company is cash strong enough that you can always have, let's say, a certain percentage of outstanding receivables that are delinquent, and it's not going to affect significant financial obligations in terms of day-to-day operations or anything else, right?
Yes, and I agree. You have to have this, like, you have to make the call, right? It's like that first year when we had a problem with it. I mean, a client owed us $100,000, and for a small company that's big, right? They only delivered 10 of it, and then I could go spend the next 3 years fighting for the rest of it. For what? So we literally had this decision of like, we can go fighting for it, stop work completely, and be like, all right, lesson learned, a very expensive one, and go.
I think in like 15 years of doing this, we've probably encountered, I don't know, a handful of truly delinquent clients over the years.
Yeah.
And I just actually went through like engaging legal counsel to help us actually recover a certain amount of collections, because again, you run the risk benefit analysis and the math wound up working out okay, and we felt pretty confident. But like 1 out of like 10, you know what I'm saying? So like I don't think it's a common
right. Like collections,
sometimes there is no recourse, right? Sometimes it's just a bad client.
I mean, sure. I mean that's like the absolutely not. But a very strong worded letter from legal will do the trick a lot of times, right?
A lot of times, that's right.
It doesn't cost you that much.
I would also say like
collections. You can do the whole factoring thing and all that kind of stuff.
I would also say like building a relationship. If you have an account management team or an accounts receivables team or an ops team that handles your AR and stuff like that, focusing on building a relationship with the accounts payable department is always a good idea. Having a direct line of communication around your client project manager or your client stakeholder and straight to where like the processing is going on, because a lot of times it comes down to processing. That's another thing that happens a lot. We're changing systems. Oh, we're going through an M&A. There are a lot, right? There are integration. The person in charge just left, and now we're changing everything is in flux. Like all these things that happen
heard them all.
Exactly. I mean, AP. And I'm sorry if I'm offending the millions of fans we have out there who work in accounts payable, but like the people who work in AP are like the people who in school like came up with a different excuse every day of why they didn't have their homework done. Right? Like you all do that, kid.
Get paid for it, man. That's the job.
Creative. Yeah, exactly.
They're like job, man.
Professionals.
It's definitely that.
And I will tell you too, like I've talked to a lot of CFOs of bigger companies, and they'll be the first to tell you like when larger clients are looking to tighten things up, their vendors are the last one. I mean, the CFOs let everybody know, the controller, AP, everybody know, vendors eat last. So, that's part of being in our business too.
It is a little tough. And I say with bigger clients, be friends with your procurement department that deals with all of it.
That helps too.
With larger companies, like, you get approvals for a whole over place. I've dealt with a whole bunch of things and being the big system, and you're like, you email the help desk and they're like, you need approval from this and this person. And we're like, we already are, you've been paying us for, this many years. Like, it's one of those things that you just, it's funny how when people get in this business, it's kind of like, or in our kind of businesses, right? You're like, I just want to do the work. But there's so much of the extra things that, like, I might be like glutton for punishment, but I actually like doing that stuff. It's weird. Like, I like figuring out the systems too. One of the reasons we do retainer is because I don't want to freaking do hourly and deal with it every month. It just goes out, goes in. Yes, I'll be leaving a little bit of money on the table, sure, but it's worth it. At least for me.
Yeah.
But the little things, like figuring out who to talk to in payments and like, all right, I have connections here and there. Oh, I can talk to that person and they'll get me because they're like, this is these guys. Like, there's no if buts about, just pay it,
And that's where like standardizing, having that SOP of like when somebody comes in, this is who you're building relationships with. This is the lines of communication, setting those lines of demarcation where you're going to say, this is now a delinquent account. And what actually happens when there's a delinquent account? Does everybody know what happens from finance to the project manager, to the team, to everybody who's doing resource planning, to everybody involved around that account? For us, trying to set, we set both a time-based sort of delinquency marker and a money-based delinquency marker, right? So sometimes, like for us, it's like if you're more than like 90 days past your due date, we start to look into like, okay, what's going on? Not just, we're already talking about what's going on, but like at this point, we've sort of reached out enough times where we're starting to go, you're starting to head towards like, we have to suspend the account for a little while and focus on our paying clients, which is something that we say quite often, right? That usually another way to try and get the ball rolling. Yeah. And then sometimes it's a certain amount of money that's just outstanding. And to your point right now, I mean, we're in the midst of a multi-year, multi-million-dollar project where, we went ahead and did, a bunch of work that was good for the overall part of the project, but not necessarily part of the original phase. So we're trying to sort of collect on the work that we've done. And, you're sitting out there right now with an account that has, 6 figures of outstanding receivables, but I'm breaking my own rule, right? Even with that client, that's our biggest and best client right now. I know them. I have a relationship with them. I trust them. I understand why they're a delinquent. We're working through it. It's worth it to work through it rather than pound my fist on the table and go, no, we have a $50,000 standard here. And if you blow through $50,000, we're suspending your account. Like, then I'm just spiting my face, right? Spite my nose and spite my face. So yeah. But I think having those things in place so that when these things come in and everybody kind of knows what to do and how to handle it, really important.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome, Jason. We I think exhausted some of this stuff. I mean, we can talk about cash flow all the time and
all day long, man.
Thing is, and
that's not what this is.
People, and here it is. Here's another fun show.
We're gonna have to get some kind of music overlay or something.
Oh, I got it.
Our intros and outros need some work.
Oh, I'll get some stuff in there, buddy.
But no, it looks good. It sounds good. I think only you can hear that.
I can only hear that. Yeah.
No, this was fun. Right. A lot of fun. I hope it was helpful.